The garden party was in full swing when I arrived. White tents dotted the perfectly manicured lawn. Servers in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne flutes and canapes, and at least 60 guests mingled under the warm afternoon sun. It was Mom's annual spring celebration, bigger and more expensive than last year. I'd noticed the guest list had grown from 40 to 60, and the catering had been upgraded from basic to premium. I spotted her near the marble fountain, surrounded by her friends from the country club, women in pastel dresses and statement jewelry, men in expensive casual wear. She wore a designer dress I recognized from last month's shopping trip, the one we'd seen at Neiman Marcus, the one that cost $4,000. I remembered her trying it on, twirling in front of the mirror, saying, "I deserve this." "There you are," she said when she saw me approaching. Her smile was tight. "You're late. Traffic was bad. Happy spring, Mom." Her friend Margaret looked me over, her gaze lingering on my simple cotton dress. "Is that what you're wearing?" "It's comfortable," I said evenly. Mom's jaw clenched. "Could you at least pretend to make an effort? These are important people." "I'm here, aren't I?" She turned back to her friends, dismissing me. I walked toward the beverage table, exchanging polite greetings with guests I recognized. Most were from Mom's social circle, women who lunched at expensive restaurants, men who played golf at exclusive clubs. I'd grown up around this world but never quite fit into it. Even as a child, I preferred books to parties, saving money instead of spending it. Mom had always found that embarrassing. An hour into the party, I was talking with one of the caterers about their business when Mom appeared at my elbow. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Having a conversation. With the help, in front of everyone?" Her face was flushed. "Do you have any idea how this looks?" "I was asking about their catering company. They do excellent work." "You're making me look bad." Her voice rose, drawing a few glances. "Mom, I was just. You're an embarrassment." The words came out loud and sharp. The entire garden seemed to go quiet. Then her hand connected with my face. The slap echoed across the lawn. My cheek burned. My eyes watered from the impact. 60 people stared at us in stunned silence. "Get out," she screamed. "Get out of my house." I touched my face, feeling the heat there. For a moment, I couldn't move. Then I picked up my purse from the nearby table. "Understood," I said quietly. I walked through the silent crowd, past the shocked faces, past the servers frozen with their trays. Nobody said a word. I got in my car and drove home, my cheeks still stinging. That evening, I sat in my apartment and thought about the accounts. All the accounts I've been managing for the past 7 years. The ones Mom didn't think I knew about. The ones she certainly didn't know I was funding. It started when Dad died. He'd left Mom the house, but little else. His business, a small consulting firm, had failed 2 years before his death, eating through their savings as he tried desperately to keep it afloat. He'd taken out loans, maxed out credit cards, borrowed from friends. The life insurance barely covered the funeral costs and some of the immediate debts. Mom had been devastated, not just by grief, but by the sudden realization that she was broke. The house still had a $380,000 mortgage. Property taxes were $15,000 annually. She had $67,000 in credit card debt. The car she drove had 2 years left on its lease at $890 per month. Her country club membership, something she insisted was essential for social standing, cost $18,000 per year. She came to me desperate 3 months after the funeral. "I can't lose the house. I can't lose everything. This is all I have left of your father." I was 27 then, newly successful in my tech career. I just sold my first startup for $8 million. Mom didn't know about the sale. She'd never asked about my computer job. "How much do you need?" I asked. "The mortgage is 3 months behind. Property taxes are due. I have credit card debt." I looked at the numbers. It was bad, really bad. Without help, she'd lose everything within 6 months. So I made a decision. Through my financial manager, I set up a system. My investment accounts would automatically transfer money to cover Mom's expenses, mortgage, property taxes, utilities, her country club membership, her car payment, her credit cards, everything. The payments came from accounts in my business manager's name. Mom received notifications that an anonymous benefactor had established a trust for her benefit. She never questioned it, never wondered who was behind it. For 7 years, I'd funded her lifestyle. The house, the parties, The designer clothes, the luxury vacations, all of it paid for by the daughter she found embarrassing. I kept working, building my second startup, making careful investments. The 8 million had grown to 40 million. I could afford to support her. It seemed easier than confronting the truth, that she'd never actually become financially independent after Dad's death. But sitting in my apartment with a hand-shaped welt on my face, I made a different decision. Monday morning, I called my financial manager. The account supporting Margaret Anderson, I said. I want all automatic transfers stopped immediately. He paused. All of them. Every single one. Mortgage, credit cards, utilities, club memberships. Everything stops today. She'll receive notification that the trust support has ended. Are you sure about this? Completely sure. Understood. I'll process the terminations within the hour. Next, I called the mortgage company directly. This is regarding the account for 2847 Riverside Drive. I'm the guarantor on that mortgage. I'm formally removing my guarantee effective immediately. The representative checked her system. Ms. Anderson, you've been the guarantor for 7 years. If you remove your guarantee, the primary account holder will need to qualify on her own, or the loan will be called. I understand. And you're certain? Yes. I'll process the paperwork. Mrs. Margaret Anderson will be notified within 48 hours. I spent the rest of Monday making similar calls to the credit card companies where I was the authorized payer, the country club where I'd been covering the membership fees, and the luxury car dealership where I'd guaranteed the lease. By Tuesday afternoon, the system I'd built over 7 years was completely dismantled. Wednesday morning, my phone started ringing. Mom's number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. There's some kind of mistake with my accounts. The bank is saying my mortgage payment was rejected. Call me. Thursday, she called 6 times. I deleted each voicemail without listening. Friday afternoon, she showed up at my office building. Security called up. Tell her I'm not available, I said. She's very insistent, Ms. Anderson. She's saying it's an emergency. Tell her to make an appointment through my assistant. She's asking about some accounts. She seems quite upset. Not my concern. Security convinced her to leave after 20 minutes. That evening, I received a text from my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister. Your mother called me crying. Something about her accounts being frozen? Do you know anything about this? I didn't respond. Saturday brought more calls. Sunday, my phone buzzed constantly. I turned it off and spent the weekend reading. Monday, exactly 1 week after the party, my financial manager called. I'm getting calls from multiple creditors, he said. Your mother's mortgage payment bounced. Her credit cards are being declined. The country club called about unpaid dues. Her car lease company is threatening repossession. As expected. She's also hired a lawyer. They're trying to find out who was behind the trust. They won't find anything actionable. The trust terms explicitly stated that support could be terminated at any time for any reason. They're claiming financial elder abuse. I laughed. She's 62 and perfectly capable of managing her own finances. Or she would be if she lived within her means. They're also claiming you had a verbal agreement to continue support. We had no agreement. I anonymously provided assistance through a trust. That assistance has ended. There's nothing illegal about that. Understood. I'll have our legal team prepare a response. Tuesday afternoon, my assistant buzzed my office. Your mother is in the lobby again. She has someone with her. Looks like a lawyer. Same answer. I'm not available. They're demanding to see you. Something about fiduciary responsibility. Call building security. If they're not gone in 5 minutes, we'll get the police involved for trespassing. They left after 10 minutes. Wednesday, the calls intensified. Mom called from different numbers, friends' phones, blocked numbers, numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored all of them. Thursday, she sent a letter by courier to my office. My assistant brought it in, marked urgent. I opened it. 3 pages of her handwriting, becoming increasingly desperate. I don't understand what happened. The bank says someone stopped paying my mortgage. My credit cards are maxed out, and the payments aren't going through. The country club is threatening to revoke my membership. My car is being repossessed next week. Please, if you know anything about who was helping me, I need to find them. I'm going to lose everything. At the bottom, I'm sorry about the party. I was stressed. Please help me. I put the letter in my desk drawer and returned to work. Friday afternoon, my financial manager called again. Your mother's house is going into foreclosure. The bank filed papers this morning. She has 90 days. That's standard procedure. Her credit cards have been canceled for non-payment. The country club terminated her membership. Her car was repossessed yesterday. Thank you for the update. There's one more thing. She started a GoFundMe, claiming she's a widow facing homelessness due to financial hardship. That's her choice. It's raised $300 in 2 days. Not surprising. Her actual friends know she's been living beyond her means for years. 2 weeks after the party, Aunt Linda called from Mom's phone. You need to talk to your mother, she said. She's falling apart. The house is in foreclosure. She has no money. She can't even afford groceries. She can get a job, I said calmly. She's 62 years old. Plenty of people work at 62. In fact, most people don't have the luxury of retiring early. How can you be so cold? She's your mother. She slapped me in front of 60 people and threw me out of her house. She said that was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. She was clear about how she felt. So you're just going to let her lose everything? I'm not making her lose anything. She's losing things because she can't afford them. That's called consequences. But you could help her. I could. I'm choosing not to. This is cruel. What's cruel is slapping your daughter at a party because she talked to a caterer. What's cruel is calling her an embarrassment in front of her entire social circle. I'm simply stepping back from a situation that no longer serves me. Aunt Linda hung up on me. 3 weeks after the party, my financial manager sent me a detailed report. Mom's house sale was scheduled for foreclosure auction. Her credit rating had dropped 200 points. She'd moved in with Aunt Linda temporarily. She'd applied for several retail jobs but hadn't been hired yet. She's also been telling people that you cut her off, he added. Some of her friends have been calling your office. Forward all such calls to our legal team, I said. Already done. A month after the party, I received one final letter, hand-delivered by courier, marked personal. Inside was a single page. I know it was you. Linda helped me figure it out. You were paying for everything, for 7 years. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But now I understand. You were taking care of me, and I treated you terribly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please help me. I'm begging you. I'll lose the house next month. I have nowhere to go. Please. I read it twice. Then I pulled out my phone and typed a response. You're right. It was me. I paid your mortgage, your bills, your country club fees, your car lease, your credit cards. For 7 years, I funded the lifestyle you thought you were entitled to. You never asked where the money came from. You never questioned the anonymous trust. You just spent it. And while I was paying for your designer dresses and garden parties, you called me an embarrassment. You slapped me in front of your friends. So now you can figure out how to support yourself like the rest of us. Consider this your education in financial independence. I didn't send it. Instead, I deleted it and wrote something simpler. The trust that was supporting you has ended. I have no information about who established it or why it was terminated. I suggest you speak with a financial advisor about living within your means. I sent that one. Her response came immediately. It was you. I know it was you. How can you do this to your own mother? I blocked her number. The house sold at auction 6 weeks after the party. Mom moved into a small apartment across town, working part-time at a department store. I heard all this through Aunt Linda's occasional updates, which I didn't ask for but didn't stop. My business continued to thrive. The startup I'd been building went public 3 months after the party, valuing my shares at $70 million. I bought a larger apartment downtown, donated significantly to charities supporting domestic violence survivors, and established a scholarship fund for women in technology. Sometimes I drive past Mom's old house. A young family lives there now. They've added a playground in the backyard where the party tent used to stand. I never responded to any more of Mom's messages. Eventually, they stopped coming. My financial manager asked me once if I regretted my decision. I thought about it carefully before answering. No, I said. I regret enabling her for 7 years. I regret not letting her face reality sooner. I regret thinking that money could buy me respect or love, or even basic decency. But I don't regret stopping. That's fair, he said. I built my success by recognizing when an investment wasn't paying returns. Mom was simply the hardest investment to walk away from, but like any good business person, I learned to cut my losses. She taught me that love has conditions. I simply taught her that support does too. We both learned our lessons that spring. The difference is, I learned mine voluntarily. I'm Jessica. The day my husband, Edward, announced that his sister was moving in, I was in the kitchen, making his favorite lasagna. He dropped the news casually, as if he were commenting on the weather. "Nancy's going through a rough divorce," he said. "She needs a place to stay for a while." I nearly dropped the dish I was holding. "Stay with us? For how long?" "Just until she gets back on her feet. A month, tops." He had that look, the one that said his mind was already made up. I glanced around our modest two-bedroom home and sighed. "She can take the guest room, I guess. It'll be tight, but—" Edward shifted uncomfortably. "The guest room's full of her stuff already. I told her she could have her bedroom. She needs somewhere comfortable, considering what she's going through." My sauce-covered spoon clattered onto the counter. "And where are we supposed to sleep?" "I thought we could camp out in the living room. Just temporarily." That first night, Edward claimed the couch, leaving me with some blankets on the kitchen floor. "Just for tonight," he promised. "We'll figure something out tomorrow." Tomorrow stretched into a week. Apparently, the couch was too lumpy for his back, so he moved into our bedroom, with Nancy. "I need the mattress," he claimed, citing a mysterious medical condition I'd never heard of before. At work, my best friend Pamela noticed something was off. "You look exhausted," she said during lunch. "Everything okay at home?" I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked. "It's just family staying over. It's fine." "Family doesn't make you sleep on kitchen floor tiles," she pressed. Pamela had known me since college and could see right through me. That evening, our neighbor Dana caught me sneaking a shower with a garden hose. "Jessica, why are you out here in the dark?" I mumbled something about watering plants, but her skeptical look told me she didn't buy it, especially since it was nearly midnight. 2 weeks in, Nancy was strutting around in my robes, using my vanity, and rearranging my closet. "You don't need all this space anyway," she said with a smirk, "since you're not sleeping here." Edward just nodded along, acting like this was completely normal. Whenever I tried to talk to him, he'd shut me down. "She's family, Jessica. She's going through a hard time. Why can't you be more understanding?" Understanding. Right. I was starting to understand plenty, like how my clothes had been stuffed into garbage bags in the garage and how Edward wouldn't meet my eyes anymore. I called my brother Tom that night, huddled in a corner of the kitchen. "Just keeping you in the loop," I said, trying to sound casual. "Nancy's staying with us for a bit." Tom was silent for a moment. "Send me pictures of anything that seems off," he finally said. "Document everything." That advice would change everything. The truth began unraveling during lunch with Pamela. I was massaging my aching back when she slid her phone across the table. "Look what Nancy posted last night." It was my dining room, transformed into a yoga studio. My grandmother's antique table was gone. The caption read, "Finally making this place feel like home. #new beginnings, #fresh start." For someone going through a messy divorce, she sure seems happy, Pamela said, scrolling through more posts. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She's been posting for months about her amazing single life. Nothing about a divorce." Later that day, Gana texted me about noise coming from my house. Apparently, Nancy was hosting a party in my bedroom. When I got home, Edward was cleaning up beer bottles. "Just a small gathering for Nancy's job promotion," he said, avoiding my gaze. "Promotion?" I thought she was too devastated from her divorce to work. He froze. "Well, she's bouncing back." "Isn't that great?" I started paying more attention. I noticed how Edward and Nancy would stop talking whenever I entered a room. I caught them whispering while browsing real estate websites. I found blank divorce papers in the trash. One night, I overheard them in the kitchen. "How long are we going to keep this up?" Nancy asked. "Until she gets fed up and leaves," Edward replied. "She's too nice to kick you out. When she's gone, the house is mine in the divorce. You can stay as long as you want." "You're sure about the prenup?" "She won't get anything. Trust me, I've got it covered." My hands shook as I texted Tom, "Need legal help ASAP." The next day, I started gathering evidence. Pamela helped me document Nancy's Instagram posts, while Donna kept a detailed log of every party and late-night disturbance. I took photos of my belongings piled in the garage and the makeshift bed I created between the refrigerator and the wall. Then Edward crossed a line. I came home to find my mother's jewelry box emptied. "Had to make room for Nancy's things," he said with a shrug. My voice trembled. "That was my mother's jewelry. Well, she's dead, isn't she? Not like she needs it." My hands shook. I moved toward the bedroom, but Edward was suddenly in my face, his fists clenched. "Try it," he growled. "Give me a reason." I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone. Tom answered on the first ring. "I'm coming to get you," he said firmly. "Don't tell them anything. We've got enough." Looking at Edward's twisted expression, I finally saw him clearly. This wasn't about Nancy needing a place to stay. It was about breaking me piece by piece until I left with nothing. But they didn't know about the cameras I'd hidden weeks ago, the prenup's infidelity clause, or the fact that my brother Tom specialized in divorce law. Late-night conversations between Edward and Nancy, captured on video, revealed everything. Edward had never loved me. He'd married me for my inheritance. The prenup blocked him from accessing it unless I left him first. "Just keep pushing," Nancy urged in one recording. "She's almost broken." I watched the footage with Tom in his office, my hands clenched tight. "They're not as clever as they think," Tom said, pausing the video. "The prenup has a clause about creating a hostile environment. Plus, harassment and threats are criminal offenses." Pamela unearthed more evidence at work. "Look at these messages," she said, showing me texts from Nancy to mutual friends. "She's been telling everyone you're mentally unstable and choosing to sleep in the kitchen." "Keep all of it," Tom advised. Dana proved invaluable too. She flipped through her notebook, reading aloud. March 15th, 2 a.m., loud party. Jessica seen sleeping in car. March 20th, verbal altercation. Edward screaming about Jessica being ungrateful. March 25th, Nancy throwing Jessica's belongings into the yard. A visit to my bank uncovered another betrayal. Edward had been trying to access my accounts. "He's attempted several unusual transfers," the banker explained. "We blocked them all." The final piece of the puzzle came from Pamela's cousin, who worked at the office of Nancy's supposed ex-husband. "She's never been married," she confirmed. "It's time to confront them," Tom said. "But carefully, we need to record everything." That evening, I entered my house with a small recording device hidden in my bag. I found Edward and Nancy lounging in my bedroom, watching my TV. "We need to talk," I said calmly. Nancy smirked. "About time, finally kicking me out." "Actually," I replied, "about your divorce. Interesting how you can't get divorced if you were never married." The color drained from their faces. Edward stood, his expression darkening. "You've been digging around. Who do you think you are?" "Careful, Edward," I said quietly. "Threats are admissible in court." "You little." He lunged toward me, fists clenched. I stepped back, speaking clearly for the recording. "Are you planning to hit me, Edward? Like you threatened before?" Nancy jumped in, her voice shrill. "Nobody will believe you. We've told everyone you're crazy. Who lives in a kitchen?" "Yes," I said, smiling. "Who forces their wife to live in the kitchen?" The cameras caught everything. Every threat, every scheme, every plan to steal my inheritance, it all ended that night. Edward lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Perfect. I pressed the panic button on my phone. Within seconds, Dana appeared at the door with 2 police officers right on schedule. As they led Edward away, Nancy started crying. "I'm sorry. We can fix this." But as I glanced at my bruised arm, I knew there was only one fix left. Tom called from the driveway. "Ready for tomorrow?" I nodded, watching the police car drive away. Everything was ready. The endgame was about to begin. Things moved fast after that night. By morning, Tom had prepared everything. Not just the divorce papers, but also a restraining order and criminal charges for Edward's assault and harassment. The security footage sealed it, Tom explained during our meeting with the judge. The evidence was damning. Edward and Nancy admitted everything on camera. The fake divorce story, their plan to force me out, and their attempts to access my accounts. When it was presented in court, Edward's face turned ghost white. "This is one of the most calculated cases of emotional abuse I've seen," the judge declared. "The premeditation is disturbing." The ruling was harsh. Edward was found guilty of domestic abuse, harassment, and attempted financial fraud. The prenup's hostile environment clause ensured I kept everything: the house, my inheritance, even his half of our joint accounts. Nancy wasn't charged. Legally, she hadn't broken any laws. But karma had other plans. "Did you see the news?" Pamela asked one morning. Nancy's company found out about everything. They fired her for ethical concerns. Apparently, Plotting to make someone homeless isn't good for their image. Dana kept me updated on the neighborhood gossip. Everyone's seen the footage. Their Jessica is crazy story backfired. Nobody will even speak to Nancy now. As for Edward, his behavior in court earned him a month in jail followed by mandatory counseling. He sent me a tear-stained letter from his cell, begging for forgiveness. I sent it back unopened. Last I heard, Edward was living in his parents' basement, and Nancy had moved 3 states away. Her reputation followed her to every job interview in town. Turns out social media works both ways. Those Instagram posts about taking over my house came back to haunt her. The day I moved back into my bedroom, Pamela and Dana helped me sage the space. We replaced the mattress, repainted the walls, and held a small ceremony to burn Edward's leftover clothes. Maybe we're being too harsh, Pamela mused as the smoke rose. I thought about the nights I spent on the kitchen floor, the isolation, the humiliation. No, I said firmly. We weren't. That evening, Tom stopped by with dinner. Any regrets? He asked. I looked around my peaceful home. No more parties, no more threats, no more walking on eggshells. Just one, I said with a smile. I wish I'd installed those cameras sooner. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. Funny how karma works that way. This story was an experiment in exploring toxic dynamics and psychological manipulation. I have some questions for you. When you watched Jessica being systematically pushed out of her own bedroom and forced to sleep on the kitchen floor, did you notice how Edward and Nancy didn't start with outright abuse? They began with temporary arrangements that slowly stripped away her dignity. Here's what I really want to know. At what moment in Jessica's story would you have snapped? Would you have quietly gathered evidence like she did, or would you have confronted them immediately? What's your breaking point between being strategic and standing up for yourself? Share your thoughts below. Growing up in a modest brick house in suburban Chicago, I learned early that being dependable often meant being overlooked. I'm Sarah Mitchell, the responsible one, a role that guaranteed I'd be invisible compared to my younger sister, Amy. She wasn't especially talented or charming, but she had perfected the art of being perpetually needy, a gravitational pull that kept everyone else in orbit around her. Sarah, honey, can you help me with dinner? Mom would call from the kitchen when I was 12, while Amy lounged on the couch, watching TV and sighing dramatically about her long day at school. That was the pattern. I cooked, cleaned, and kept my grades up while Amy thrived in her role as the family's delicate centerpiece. The moment everything shifted is still vivid in my mind. I was 15, hunched over my algebra homework at the kitchen table, when the sharp crash of breaking glass snapped me out of my focus. In the living room, Amy stood amid the glittering shards of Mom's cherished crystal vase, tears already streaming down her cheeks. I just wanted to make the room prettier for Mom's birthday, she stammered, her voice cracking in the way that always summoned our parents like moths to a flame. Dad appeared within seconds, surveyed the scene, and did exactly what I knew he would. It's okay, princess, he said gently, steering Amy away from the mess. Then, without a glance in my direction, he added, Sarah, clean this up. And be careful not to hurt yourself. As I swept up the fragments of the $500 vase, money that could have gone toward my college fund, I made a silent vow. If my family wouldn't see me for who I was, I'd make sure the world would. From that moment, I wasn't striving for their approval anymore. I was striving for myself. And I succeeded. While Amy dropped out of college 3 semesters in, the academic environment just isn't for my creative spirit, Daddy. I graduated summa cum laude in finance. While she flitted from job to job, quitting when things got too stressful, I climbed the corporate ladder and built a thriving career in investment banking. By 30, I owned a beautiful Victorian house in a quiet neighborhood and earned a 6-figure salary. That's when the calls started. Sarah, sweetie, Mom's voice trembled slightly, as it always did when she was about to ask for money. Your father and I are a bit short this month. The property taxes came due, and Amy needs help with her rent again. At first, I didn't mind. I could afford it, and family helps family, right? But the requests kept coming. 1,000 here, 2,000 there. Every failed business venture of Amy's, the yoga studio that never opened, the cafe that folded in months, the online crystal shop that sold only to relatives, was underwritten by Mom and Dad, who, in turn, leaned on me. Just until things turn around, Dad would promise. But they never did. I told myself it was fine. It wasn't like I couldn't spare the money. But I hadn't realized just how deep the entitlement ran until the day I got a text from Amy. "OMG sis, you'll never believe what happened." I was in the middle of a meeting and ignored it. Then came another. "Call me ASAP. Best news ever." By the time I got home, I had 17 missed calls, 5 from Amy, 7 from Mom, and 5 from Dad. Something was clearly up. I poured a glass of wine, settled into my favorite armchair, and called Amy. "Sarah," she shrieked. "Why haven't you answered? Mom and Dad are giving me their house." I froze the wine glass halfway to my lips. "What?" "They're moving to that retirement community, Pine Grove, and they're giving me the house." "Isn't it amazing?" They said, "Since you're already so successful, this makes things fair." Fair. The word tasted bitter. The house I'd helped them pay off. The house whose property taxes and repairs I covered. It was fair to hand it over to Amy, who contributed nothing. "That's wonderful, Amy." I managed my voice brittle. "Thanks, sis. Oh, and one more thing. Mom and Dad are a little short on moving costs. They were wondering if you could help out. Just this once." Just this once. The same line I'd heard for years. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up before she could press further. As I sat in the dim light of my living room, the untouched wine warming in my hand, something inside me snapped. All these years I told myself I was helping my family because that's what good daughters do. But I wasn't helping them. I was enabling them. My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. I watched it ring until it stopped, then opened my banking app. The $3,000 transfer I'd scheduled for next month sat there, waiting. My finger hovered over the cancel button. 15 years of memories raced through my mind. Cleaning up Amy's messes, funding her failures, sacrificing my time, my money, my peace of mind for people who saw me as nothing more than a safety net. My mother called 6 more times that night. Each one went to voicemail, something I'd never dared to do before. Around midnight, the text started. "Sarah, please call us. We need to discuss this as a family. Your sister is really hurt that you're not more excited for her. We raised you better than this, Sarah." That last one made me laugh. A short, bitter sound that echoed in my quiet house. They raised me better. They barely raised me at all. I was too busy raising myself, and sometimes Amy too. Sleep was elusive that night. Memories churned like storm clouds in my mind. Amy's 16th birthday, when they bought her a car, the same year they told me I'd need student loans for college because they were struggling. The Christmas I worked 3 jobs to cover tuition while Amy got a trip to Europe to find herself. The endless family dinners I cooked, the dishes I washed, the problems I solved, all while Amy basked in her perpetual state of need. By morning, I had made a decision. I wouldn't just cancel the transfer. I'd drive to their house and have the conversation we should have had 15 years ago. The drive felt surreal, the familiar streets mocking me with their perfect lawns and tidy gardens. How many of these houses, I wondered, were really being held up by invisible children, the ones who couldn't say no? When I pulled into their driveway, Amy's shiny new Tesla was parked there, a down payment courtesy of our parents, of course. I steeled myself and rang the doorbell. Mom opened it before I could knock. "Sarah, thank God. We've been so worried. Why haven't you been answering?" I walked past her into the living room. Dad was in his recliner, Amy perched on its arm like a princess holding court. Mom hurried to join them, completing the tableau. "We need to talk," I said, standing in the center of the room. "About the house, about the money, about everything." Dad leaned forward, his voice calm but condescending. "Sarah, I know this might seem sudden, but your mother and I have thought this through. Amy needs." "Amy needs," I interrupted. "What about what I need? What about the fact that I've been paying your mortgage for 5 years? The property taxes? The new roof? The loans that were never repaid?" Amy blinked. "You've been paying their mortgage." "Don't act surprised, Amy. Where did you think the money was coming from?" "Your crystal healing business." "Sarah," Mom's voice sharpened. "There's no need to be cruel." "Cruel?" I let out a cold laugh. "You want to talk about cruel? Let's talk about the over $200,000 I've funneled into this family in the last 5 years. Money that went straight to supporting Amy's lifestyle. Money that kept this house afloat, the house you're now giving to her." "But you have your own house," Amy protested. "You're successful." You don't need. I'm successful because I worked for it. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. I worked 3 jobs in college. I lived on raiment and coffee. I gave up vacations and nights out. And I helped this family because I thought that's what family does. But family doesn't exploit each other, does it? Dad's face reddened as he stood. Now listen here, young lady. Everything we've done has been for this family. Your sister needed. No, I snapped. Amy wanted. There's a difference. And you two enabled her every whim while expecting me to pick up the slack. Well, guess what? I'm done. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. With a few taps, I canceled the next $3,000 transfer and deleted the recurring payments altogether. Sarah, please, Mom stepped closer, her voice breaking. Don't do this. We're family. Yes, we are. And it's time this family learned some hard truths. I'm not your ATM anymore. I'm not your safety net. I'm your daughter, your other daughter, and I deserve better. Amy's tears began to flow on cue. How can you be so selfish? Mom and Dad are trying to be fair. Fair? I turned to her. Fine, let's talk about fair. Let's calculate how much I've invested in this house. Let's figure out its market value. Shall I call my accountant? I have the receipts. The room went silent except for Amy's sniffles. So here's the deal, I said, my voice steady. I'm calling my lawyer tomorrow. We're going to figure out exactly how much of this house I funded. Either you buy me out, properly, legally, or we sell it and split the proceeds. And going forward, Amy can learn what a budget is. But Pine Grove, Mom stammered. We've already put down a deposit. That sounds like a you problem, I replied. Maybe Amy can help. She's getting a free house after all. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and don't bother calling for a while. I need time to decide if I even want to be part of this family anymore. The drive home was a blur, my hands shaking on the wheel, but my mind felt clearer than it had in years. When I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed with a text from Amy. I hope you're happy. Mom's crying and Dad's talking about canceling their retirement plans. This is all your fault. I started to respond, then stopped. Instead, I blocked her number. Then I blocked my parents too. As I walked into my house that I had earned, I felt something unfamiliar. Freedom. But freedom was just the beginning. What happened next would force us all to confront truths we'd been avoiding for decades. A week passed in blissful silence. No frantic voicemails from Mom, no guilt-ridden texts from Amy, no passive-aggressive emails from Dad. For the first time in years, my life felt my own. I threw myself into work, rediscovered hobbies I'd abandoned, and even spent an afternoon reading on the couch, a luxury I hadn't indulged in since college. It's remarkable how much lighter life feels when you're no longer carrying someone else's burdens. Then the letter came. It arrived on a crisp Saturday morning, wrapped in the unmistakable weight of legal seriousness. The law firm's letterhead gleamed, and my heart sank the moment I saw my parents' names on the envelope. I braced myself, but nothing could have prepared me for what I read. They were contesting my claims to the house. The letter laid out their case with clinical precision. According to their lawyer, every dollar I had given over the years was a gift, freely offered with no expectation of repayment or ownership. They had proof, birthday cards with notes like, "Hope this helps with the house," and Christmas messages saying, "Just a little something to ease the load." Every act of generosity, every heartfelt gesture, twisted into evidence against me. I sat on the stairs in stunned silence, clutching the letter. It was like being stabbed with my own kindness. My next call was to Jennifer, my lawyer. Her voice was calm but firm. "Sarah, they've got some legal standing here. Without formal agreements, proving these weren't gifts will be challenging. But," she added with a glint of resolve, "we have options." Over the next few weeks, those options turned into a full-blown counteroffensive. Jennifer and I pieced together years of bank statements, emails, and texts, a paper trail that told the real story. Every transfer labeled as urgent, every plea for help, every empty promise of repayment went into a meticulously organized dossier. Jennifer called it evidence of a pattern. I called it betrayal in black and white. But the real shock came from an unexpected phone call. "Ms. Mitchell." The voice on the line was polite but hesitant. "This is Charles Wilson from Pine Grove Retirement Community. I'm reaching out about your parents' application." My instinct was to hang up. Their financial mess was no longer my problem. But curiosity held me in place. We're reviewing your application and noticed some inconsistencies in their financial records, he continued. They've listed you as a guarantor for their monthly payments. Is this correct? The laugh that burst from my mouth was sharp enough to make him pause. They did what? They provided your information. Is this not something you agreed to? Absolutely not, I said firmly. And if I were you, I'd take a closer look at their claims of financial stability. That evening, I found an email waiting in my inbox from Amy. The subject line read, "I hope you're proud of yourself." Against my better judgment, I opened it. Pine Grove rejected Mom and Dad's application. They're devastated. This is all your fault. You've always been bitter and jealous, but now you've gone too far. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy in your big empty house all alone. I stared at the words for a long time. Empty house. Was that how they saw me? A successful daughter living in quiet bitterness while Amy basked in their love? They couldn't have been more wrong. Instead of replying, I opened a document I'd been compiling for weeks. I attached it to an email addressed to all three of them. The subject line was simple. Let's settle this. Asterisk attached is a full accounting of every dollar I've given this family over the past 15 years. Total: $427,893.42. Of that, $196,547.33 went directly toward the house. You have two options. Buy me out for the documented amount, plus interest, terms attached. We sell the house and split the proceeds according to investment contribution. You have 48 hours to respond. P.S. Amy, you mentioned my house is big and empty. It's true that I live alone. But I'd rather be alone and respected than surrounded by people who only value me for my bank account. Asterisk. Their responses came quickly, though predictably. Mom, how can you put a price on family? Dad, we raised you better than this. Amy, you're dead to me. But 3 days later, I received an email that stopped me in my tracks. This one was from Dad. Asterisk Sarah. I've spent the last 72 hours reviewing our finances. I had no idea how much we'd taken from you over the years. Your mother and I thought we were helping Amy, but in doing so, we failed you. We decided to sell the house. You'll get your investment back with interest. It's not just about the money. It's about acknowledging how badly we've let you down. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I hope this can be the first step toward making things right. Love. Dad asterisk. I read his words over and over, each time feeling a weight lift from my chest. My response was short but heartfelt. Thank you for seeing me. 2 months later, the house was sold. Andy refused to speak to any of us during the process. Mom alternated between tears and icy silence. But Dad was different. Quiet, thoughtful, almost humbled. When everything was finalized, he asked to meet me for coffee. We found a smaller place, he said, stirring his cup. Something within our means. Your mother's adjusting. And Amy, he sighed. Amy's learning to stand on her own. It's about time. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Sarah, he continued, we taught Amy to depend on us, and we taught you to carry us. We failed both of you in different ways. I'm sorry. Truly. I know, I said softly. Can we try again? Not like before, but maybe as something better. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had always put Amy first, now asking me to help rebuild something new. Yes, I said. But this time, we do it right. No more money. No more enabling. Just family. For the first time in years, he smiled, a real smile. And for the first time, I believed we could be something better. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. My earliest memories always begin in the same place. Our cramped kitchen, age 8, watching Mom cry over bills scattered across the yellow Formica countertop. The harsh fluorescent light made the past due stamps glow like warnings, while Dad's muddy work boots left trails across the linoleum. He'd just come home from another failed job interview, the smell of cheap coffee still clinging to him. We'll figure it out, Marie, he'd say, his voice heavy with defeat. On the floor, my 5-year-old brother Tommy played with his battered secondhand toys, blissfully unaware of the weight pressing down on the rest of us. That was 20 years ago. Now, at 28, I sometimes wish I could go back to being that naive little girl who didn't know what red stamps meant. My name is Sarah Mitchell, And this is the story of how I lost everything trying to give my family the life I thought they deserved. The turning point came when I was 16. Dad's back injury forced him out of construction work for good, and Mom's part-time job at the diner barely covered groceries. I still remember walking into the principal's office to ask for a schedule change so I could work afternoons at Miller's hardware store. Mrs. Peterson gave me a look so full of pity, it made my stomach twist. "Sarah, you're one of our brightest students. Are you sure about this?" I was sure. School came easily to me. I could keep my grades up even with less time in class. Tommy, starting middle school, needed clothes, supplies, and the asthma medication our insurance barely covered. Someone had to step up, and it wasn't going to be my little brother. "He's sensitive," Mom would say when I complained about Tommy skipping chores or blowing money on art supplies. "He's got a creative soul. We need to nurture that." By 18, I was working 2 jobs and taking online college courses. Days at the hardware store, nights waitressing, and studying in between. My parents beamed when I got promoted to assistant manager, but their pride didn't stop the constant asks for more money. "Tommy needs new art supplies," Mom would say. "He has so much potential." One sweltering summer evening, I came home from a double shift to find Tommy sprawled across our new couch. One I'd helped pay for, surrounded by expensive sketching pencils and a pristine leather-bound sketchbook. "Hey, sis," he grinned, holding up his latest drawing. "What do you think? My teacher says I could really make it big someday." His drawing was good, as always, but my eyes locked on the price tag still attached to the sketchbook. $75, nearly a full day's wages for me. "Mom," I called out, trying to keep calm. "Can we talk about the art supplies?" She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Even at 45, she was beautiful, though the worry lines etched around her eyes told the story of her life. "Isn't it wonderful?" she gushed. "His teacher says he might even get a scholarship." "Mom, we agreed to stick to the budget." "You don't believe in your brother's dreams." Her voice took on that familiar guilt-laden edge. "He needs proper materials to develop his talent. You want him to succeed, don't you?" And just like that, I caved. I always caved. That night, sitting at my tiny desk, surrounded by overdue bills and budget spreadsheets, I made a decision. I'd take out a loan to buy the house for my parents. My credit was excellent, and it would give them financial breathing room. After all, I was already covering most of the mortgage. They accepted with tears of gratitude. Tommy called me the best sister ever. The paperwork was signed, and at 23, I became the official owner of our family home. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. The way Mom started insisting on getting the mail before me, the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked into the room, Tommy's endless supply of new materials despite our strict budget. But I was too focused on holding us all together to see the cracks spreading beneath my feet. The storm brewing in the distance would soon shatter everything I'd worked so hard to build. The first sign that something was wrong came on a crisp autumn morning. I was at work organizing the new power tool display at Miller's when my phone buzzed with a text from our neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? There are some people looking around your house with clipboards. They're taking pictures." My stomach dropped. Inspections? I hadn't scheduled anything. I called home, but no one answered. That wasn't normal. Mom should have been home watching her soap operas, and Dad rarely ventured out except for his doctor's appointments. I mumbled some excuse to my manager and left, gripping the steering wheel tightly as I drove home. When I pulled up, an unfamiliar SUV was parked in our cracked driveway alongside a sleek black Mercedes. A woman in a sharp blazer stood on the porch, measuring it with a tape. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to mask my growing panic. "Can I help you?" She turned with a professional smile, clipboard in hand. "You must be Sarah. Your parents mentioned you. I'm Linda Matthews from Prestige Realty. I must say, this property has incredible potential. With some updates, it'll sell above market value." Her words struck like a slap. "Sell? My house?" "There's a mistake," I said firmly. "This house isn't for sale." Linda's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, but Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell signed the listing agreement this morning. Your brother Tommy was here too, charming young man, very talented artist. They said you'd be moving out soon." I didn't wait for her to finish. Heart pounding, I unlocked the front door and called for my parents. The house was eerily quiet. But it wasn't just the silence that unsettled me. Things were missing. Family photos were gone. The antique vase my grandmother left me was no longer by the window, and the drawers in the kitchen hung half open. My phone buzzed. Tommy's name lit up the screen. "Hey sis," he greeted cheerfully. "I guess you met Linda. Mom and Dad are here at my new studio. You've got to see it. It's amazing." "Studio?" My voice was tight. "What studio, Tommy? What's going on?" He chuckled, the carefree kind that had always gotten him out of trouble. "You're gonna love this. Remember that art competition I entered? A gallery owner saw my work and offered me a space in his building. Real professional setup, Sarah. Mom and Dad helped with the deposit." The words felt like a punch to the gut. "Helped with the deposit? With what money, Tommy?" There was a pause before he spoke again, his tone suddenly cautious. "Well, Mom said you're doing great at the hardware store, and the house is worth so much more now." I didn't let him finish. "Where's Mom?" "Put her on the phone." Muffled voices, then Mom's overly sweet tone. "Sarah, sweetie, we were going to tell you tonight over dinner. It's just such an incredible opportunity for Tommy. The gallery owner says he has real potential. We just needed some capital to get him started, and since the housing market is so hot right now." "The house is in my name," I interrupted, voice shaking. "You can't sell it." "Check your emails, honey," Mom said softly. "Remember those papers we had you sign last month? For the property tax assessment?" Dread pulled in my stomach as I opened my laptop. Buried in my inbox was the email she'd mentioned. But the papers weren't about taxes. They were a transfer of deed. I'd signed the house back over to them without realizing it. They'd slipped it into a stack of documents, counting on my trust and my exhaustion to do the rest. "We're doing this for Tommy," Mom continued as I sat frozen. "He needs this chance. You've always been the strong one, Sarah. You'll land on your feet." Her words echoed as I stared at the screen. Strong, responsible, the daughter who always picked up the pieces. "And where am I supposed to live?" I asked quietly. "Oh, Linda knows some lovely apartments. Perfect for a single person, very affordable on your salary. We'll help you move, of course." Help me move. Out of my own house. The one I bought, maintained, and sacrificed everything for. I heard Tommy in the background, talking about new equipment he was buying for his studio. Mom quickly ended the call, promising to explain everything at dinner. But I already understood perfectly. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, the familiar creak of the chair beneath me grounding me as my world unraveled. This was where I'd planned budgets, paid bills, and dreamed of a future that no longer existed. Slowly, I stood and walked through the house. Each room held memories. The railing I'd installed for Dad, the walls I painted over after Tommy's art projects, the leaky faucet I fixed last month. It was mine. It had always been mine. But it never really was. That night, I made 3 calls. First to a lawyer, second to my bank, and third to Miller's Hardware, where I submitted my 2 weeks' notice. If my family thought I'd roll over and accept their betrayal, they were about to learn just how responsible I could be. The next morning, I walked into Jenkins and Associates with a folder packed tight, receipts for every bill I paid, repair invoices, and bank statements tracing every dollar I'd sent to my parents over the years. Evidence I kept out of habit, never imagining I'd need it to prove my own family had betrayed me. Linda Jenkins, my lawyer, slid the transfer of deed under her glasses, her expression sharp. "This is blatant fraud. They intentionally misled you into signing these documents. We'll contest it." And contest it we did. That evening, instead of sitting down for their celebratory dinner, they were served legal papers. Tommy's panicked voicemail came first. "Sarah, what are you doing? The gallery lease is signed. I need that money." Mom's text followed, full of guilt-laden fury. "How could you do this to your own brother, after everything we've sacrificed for you?" Sacrificed. That word twisted something deep in my chest. Sacrifices they'd made for me? Right. Dad took a different route, cornering me at Miller's during my shift. "Princess," he said, using the nickname I hadn't heard since I was 10, "let's talk this through. We're family. We can work something out." I looked at him, really looked at him. My father, once larger than life, the man who taught me to ride a bike and always smelled of motor oil and safety. Now he stood before me, justifying how they'd taken everything I worked for. "You're right, Dad," I said quietly, my voice steady. "We are family, and that's exactly why this hurts so much." The legal battle stretched on for 3 months. 3 months of ignored calls, cold stares, and whispered accusations that I was ruining the family. Tommy's gallery plans crumbled when the funds were frozen in escrow, and Mom didn't hesitate to paint me as the villain to anyone who'd listen. But the truth was on my side. Bank statements proved years of mortgage payments. Emails documented repairs I had paid for. Witnesses like Mrs. Rodriguez confirmed how I'd maintained the house while my parents and Tommy indulged in their dreams. The final hearing landed on a biting February morning. I sat on one side of the courtroom, calm and resolute. Across the aisle, Mom dabbed tears theatrically while Tommy avoided my gaze. Dad stared at the table like it could somehow save him. The ruling was swift and definitive. The deed transfer was void. The house remained mine. On top of that, the court ordered my parents to repay every documented expense I'd covered over the years. Mom's gasp at the number echoed through the courtroom. "But we don't have that kind of money," she blurted. "Then you'll need to sell the house," my lawyer replied evenly. Poetic justice never tasted so bittersweet. Outside, Tommy approached me, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I didn't realize how much you'd given up. I just thought." "That was the problem, Tommy," I said, cutting him off. "You never had to think about it. That was always my job." 2 months later, I sold the house, not to Linda Matthews, but to a young family who reminded me of what we used to be: hardworking, hopeful, unbroken. I ignored the high-dollar offers and gave them a fair deal instead. Mom and Dad moved into a small apartment across town. The gallery owner backed out once he learned of the legal drama, leaving Tommy to take his first real job at a coffee shop. Mom hasn't spoken to me since, and Dad only sends the occasional text on holidays. As for me, I took my share of the sale and finally finished my business degree. I quit Miller's and started a consulting firm to help people avoid the financial mistakes I made. My new apartment might be small, but it's mine. Every single corner of it. Last week, I ran into Mrs. Rodriguez at the store. She gave me one of her signature hugs and asked if I regretted fighting my family. "No," I said honestly, surprising even myself. "I just regret waiting so long." She smiled knowingly. "You were always the umbrella of Sarah, shielding them from the storm while you got soaked. It's good to see you finally stepping out of the rain." She was right. I'd spent my whole life being their umbrella. Now I was learning to dance in the rain. Yesterday, I got a letter from Tommy. Inside was an old sketch of me standing at the kitchen counter, calculator in hand, surrounded by bills. He'd written underneath, "I'm sorry I took your shelter. Someday, I hope you'll help me learn how to build my own." Maybe someday I will, but for now, I'm focused on building something else. A life where love doesn't mean losing myself. A life where responsibility doesn't mean sacrifice. A life that, for the first time, feels completely, unapologetically mine.